Thank you. Thank you very much. Put my other glasses on. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Borough of Barrow-in-Furness Planning Committee. I'm Anne Thompson. I chair the committee. We have done training and we have been doing Zoom meetings all year, so hopefully we're quite adept at it. First, can I remind you of some domestic arrangements? It is important that our participants conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. The mobile phone must be turned off and you must assure you're not on any other device and unmute when you are asked to speak. Please do not interrupt any other speakers. If members lose connection to the meeting, we will adjourn for a quarter of an hour to get them back on. I'd like to remind everybody this is being broadcast live on the internet, the whole of the meeting, but anything in part 2, which we haven't got, is being recorded. To vote on matters, I will ask for a mover, a seconder, and then ask Paula, the Democratic Services Officer, to do a vote. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, so I will hand over to Democratic Services Officer to do the roll call of members and officers present at the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Aswad, Councillor Hall and Councillor Seward, and we've got Councillor Hazel Edwards substituting for Councillor Hall today. So I'll just do a roll call of the remaining members. Councillor Anne Thompson.
Present.
Colin Thompson.
Present.
Burley.
Present.
Daniel Edwards.
Present.
Hazel Edwards.
Present.
Gaughan.
Present.
Husband.
Present.
McEwen.
Present.
Mooney.
Present.
And Not.
Present.
Thank you. And then officers, if I just say your name, you can tell me your full name and your job title, please. Jason.
Jason Hipkiss, Development Services Manager.
Maureen.
Maureen Smith, Principal Planning Officer.
And Charles.
Charles Wilton, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. We've also got some speakers today, Chair, but we'll let them in at the relevant points when they're and introduce them as their applications arise. Thanks.
Councillor Burns is just on her way. She's just phoned for the code.
Thank you. Chair, you're on mute.
Have I said all that on mute?
Sorry, I wasn't sure whether you were waiting for Councillor Burns to join or I couldn't
really.
see you, ma'am.
I was going to get on with the agenda. Right, urgent items. I haven't received any. Delegations, I haven't received any. Admission of public and press, everything's in part 1. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any interest to declare?
Yes. Just a normal chair, Cumbria County Council.
Oh, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
You're the same, Derek. And yeah.
Thank you.
Right, do you agree to note the planning applications in the delegated approval book?
Agreed.
Do you agree I confirm the minutes of the last meeting? I did them the wrong way around, but it doesn't matter.
We did. Agreed.
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 I will sign them when I can get into the town hall to sign them. So that was the minutes of the 18th of March. Right, so we go on to the planning applications. As we said, we have got people to speak. So we're starting with Netherclose, Tippins Lane, Isleth, Askham. Are you letting the people in, Paula?
Yes, I will do, Chair. We've got Mr. Winter speaking on behalf of the objectors and Mr. Wilkes, the applicant. So I'll just let them in now.
Right, okay.
There we go, Chair. Mr. Winter and Mr. Wilkes are on the call now.
Right. Good afternoon, Mr. Winter and Mr. Wilkes. Welcome to the Planning Committee. I'm Thompson and I'm the chair. So we have the objector first. So Mr. Winter, do you want to have your 5 minutes to say why you're objecting to the planning application at Netherfield?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, members. My name is Peter Winter. I'm a South Cumbria-based town planning consultant, and I'm representing the owners of the adjacent properties, Bankfield Hall and Bankfield Hall Barn, in their opposition to this storage building at Nether Close. My client's concern relate not to the provision of such a building somewhere within the 7-acre garden of Nether Close, but to the fact that it is proposed to be sited so close to their property and also to its scale. Bankfield Hall Barn is a substantial property and has planning permission for conversion to 2 3-storey dwellings. The documents accompanying this application show that the application asked his agent to produce a scheme that was a short walking distance from his house, whilst at the same time being obscured from it. The site chosen is not a long-standing gravelled hardstanding. It was created last autumn by the removal of screening trees, shrubs and large volumes of banking, and the construction of a substantial steel and concrete retaining wall, just before this current application was submitted, presumably specifically to be for the site of this building, so almost presenting your planning officer with a fait accompli. However, whilst the building will be 70 metres from Nether Close and not visible from that house, it's proposed to be located around 13 metres from Bankfield Hall Barn and slightly to the west of it, where it will be in full view from the dwellings in the barn and their front garden area. Madam Chairman, I'm not certain if your officers have viewed the application site from my client's land, but it seems to me to be highly unneighbourly and highly insensitive to site a 5 or 6 car garage here, where it will be visually prominent, intrusive. It has the potential to cause noise and disturbance in close proximity to dwellings and gardens. And of course, noise doesn't have to reach statutory noise nuisance levels to be unneighbourly. Turning to the scale, I accept that the amended plans show a reduced building, but it was huge in the first place. And as your planning officer's report clearly acknowledges in its conclusion, it is still a very large building with a partial first floor that could easily be extended to the full length of the building. Now, I note that additional planting is conditioned to screen it, but in reality, falling ground levels and the orientation and scale of the building mean that it will be many years before any planting even starts to become effective. Madam Chairman, as I said earlier, my clients have no objections to the applicant building a suitably scaled garage somewhere within the curtilage of Nether Close. They are, however, totally opposed to the siting and scale of the building in such close proximity to their property. And I suspect that if such a building were proposed alongside your members' dwellings or even the applicant's dwelling, that they would all feel exactly the same way. The applicant doesn't want to see it from his house, but little or no thought appears to have been given to the imposing impacts on my client's property. He may not, of course, been aware that planning permission existed for that barn. Now, the protection of neighbouring properties from unreasonable development to ensure a good standard of amenity is a well-established material planning consideration. And I would therefore ask your committee to refuse this application and advise the applicant to consider other sites within his garden away from his neighbours, perhaps also to consider other solutions, such as extending the existing garage approved in 2016, or by splitting the proposal into 2 separate buildings and siting them elsewhere. Thank you for listening, Madam Chairman, members.
Thank you, Mr. Winter. Does any members wish to ask Mr. Winter any questions? No. Right, thank you. Mr. Wilkes, do you want to have your 5 minutes now, please?
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and everyone else involved. Yeah, I'd just like to start by showing a snapshot of the actual area that clearly shows that this building won't be seen from Mr. or Mrs. Groundwater's property. It's a pad that I store my vehicle, my maintenance vehicles from around my property. Can everybody see can that be seen?
I don't know.
All right, okay. So, yeah, so there's at least a 6 metre high retaining boundary hedge that shelters our property from Mr. Groundwaters. And yeah, the trees that were removed were dead, and we have put this pad in, but we did it properly, working closely with an ecologist who has taken pictures and verified anything that we've done there to level that standing. But yeah, I don't see from a planning point of view. I think planning are on our side, and if there's anything that I can do to help to make this go ahead, then yeah, by all means, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkes. Has the committee got anything to say? Any questions to ask to Mr. Wilkes? No? Well, who's the planning officer that's dealing with this one, please?
Myself, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. The property Never Close is a large detached house set in quite substantial grounds. They extend to 8 acres, and it's located on the main road. That's between Iliffe and Kirby, and the application is for a detached garage building within the garden or within the curtilage of Never Close. And I would say it's perhaps the largest curtilage building that we've dealt with. In some ways, it's perhaps rather like an agricultural building in terms of its size and appearance. And it is a steel framed building, which again is quite agricultural. In terms of dimensions, the main part of the building would be 19 metres long, and well, in all money, that's 62 feet, and it would be 4.6 metres wide, and there's a smaller section which adds on a similar width. The purpose of the building has been explained by Mr. Wilkes as for the garaging and storing of classic cars, also a camper van and ground maintenance equipment. And when the site was visited, the camper van and some of this plant and machinery were already parked on the hard standing where the building is proposed. If you look at the committee report on page, it's the first item in the report, and it starts on page 2. But if you scroll down to page 14, you'll see that there's 2 plans, but there's a slightly larger scale plan at the bottom of page 14. And at the top of the plan, you see a property called High Meadow, and that's a neighbouring house. And south of that, there's Never Close. And at the bottom of the plan, you'll see a red-edged rectangle. Well, that's the proposed garage. And just to give you an idea of the scale, the distance between the garage and Never Close is 50 metres. Right at the bottom of the plan, you see a building just running off the page, and that's Highfield Barn, Barnfield Barn, which is the barn that Mr. Winter referred to. The report identifies the main local plan policy as being policy H6. And what that says is that buildings should respect the setting with regards to scale and design and use of materials. And on page 7 of the report, it advises that views of the proposed garage are limited both from the main road, and of course the site is set down much lower than the road, and from the public right of way, and particularly so when the trees are in leaf, because when you look at that plan, you'll see areas of green, and those are areas of woodland around the building. And the report also recognises that the garage would be seen relative to a much larger barn, which again Mr. Winter referred to. The report also includes a section on residential amenity, and that's one of the concerns that's been raised. Well, the proposed garage would be 10 metres from the boundary, and the barn would be a further 3 to 4 metres away. And the conclusion is that taking account of that distance and the fact that the buildings are not facing each other as such, they're both looking westwards, that the proposed building is unlikely to have any major impact on the amenities of the barn. The barn itself is not occupied, but it received planning permission quite a long time ago for conversion. The house itself is a further 30 metres away. So taking account of the fact that the location is quite discreet in public views, and the conclusion reached on amenity, the recommendation is that planning permission should be granted.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Charles. That was very informative. Bill, did you want to ask Charles a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Charles. So, yeah, that was very good, informative there, Charles, because it's hard to get a thingy of the building sizes with what we've got. But when you look at that plan you've just described, I take it that's a big field there that's just surrounding it. Yeah, just yes or no? Yeah.
No, the site itself isn't a field. It's part of the grounds of Nether Close.
Right.
And it's
that's fine. Well, my question is, my question is, let's see where you could put it. Can't hear me. I'm not on mute.
No, you're all right now. We just couldn't hear you for a few seconds. Yeah.
Right. Well, I can't see where else you could put it in it seen from Banfield that Mr. Winter said. I can't see it. I've got no objections to this. I think it's okay with the trees and where it is. And it's been reduced in size and stuff like that. So no, I've not got a problem with it, Charles.
Anybody else wish to speak on this one? Hazel?
Yeah, can I just say that I do know this site quite well. And listening to Charles, which was a really good resume of everything, you know, anybody who doesn't know the site, I think he showed it very well as far as he could. Did I hear, Charles, that you said that it was for the storage of classic cars?
Chair, yes, that is my understanding, that it's 3 things have been mentioned: a camper van, plant and machinery for maintaining the grounds, and classic cars.
Okay, right. Well, if there's going to be classic cars there's not going to be loads of cars coming and going. So the traffic's not going to be a problem.
No,
you can't see it from the road. It's already been established. You can't see it from the road. You mentioned distances, 10 metres from the boundary. Then the barn was a further 4 metres. Then the house was 30 metres. So we're talking quite a distance from the house. So I have no objections either.
Okay, thank you, Hazel. Anybody else? Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I move the recommendation, Chair.
I'll second it, Chair.
We do have a slight problem with visualising applications now. We're not being able to do site visits, but hopefully we'll be able to do site visits after the middle of June, and I'm sure we'll all look forward to them. Right, it's been moved and seconded. So, Paula, can you take a roll call, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the recommendations for approval, if members could indicate their voting choice, please. Councillor Anne Thompson.
For.
Colin Thompson.
For.
Burley.
For.
Daniel Edwards.
For.
Hazel Edwards.
For.
Gone.
For.
Husband.
For.
McEwen.
For.
Mooney.
For.
Not.
For.
And Councillor Burns.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
That planning application has been carried. Thank you, Mr. Winter. Thank you, Mr. White, for attending Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, our next application with somebody to speak is 59, is it 59 Church Street? Yep, I got that right. So can you admit the speaker, please? Paula?
Yes, I will. It's Mr. Giovanni Patania. I'll just admit him now. Mr. Patania is the agent, Chair.
Right, okay.
Over to you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. I was just finding the application on my iPad. Hello, Mr. Patania. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I don't want to insult you, but welcome to the Planning Committee. You have 5 minutes to state your case, and then the members of the committee can ask you questions if they so wish. Okay, thank you.
Of course, yeah. So, Paula, if we might share the screen so we can have a look at the slides. And so I'm just a brief introduction of myself. So I'm the agent which is representing the applicant today. We are an architectural practice which specializes in developing properties into high-end and high-standard HMOs, housing multiple occupations. So just let me introduce you to these projects and give you a high-level description of what we are trying to achieve and what we are aiming to achieve with this building. Yeah, we can move to the next slide, please, Paula. Thanks. Okay, so it is our understanding that one of the only objection which has been brought on the table is related to the parking spaces. And I think this has been fully covered in the report of the case officer, yeah, in terms of assessing the actual impact of our development on the parking provision around the site. So the property is located in a really central location, as you can see from these Google Earth pictures. So if you would mind to move to the next slide, please. And is only 40 minutes away walking distance from the train station. The bus stop is only 2 minutes walking distance. So the location is really sustainable in terms of access to the existing public transport system by the future occupiers. We can move forward to the next slide. These pictures show a little bit how the property looks at the moment. As mentioned in the report of the case officer, it might have been, so the former use is not 100% clear, but it might be split into 2 houses or 2 flats, but definitely the amount of occupants in this property might have been around 5 to 6 people, yeah, because of the amount of already existing bedrooms in this property. And as you can see, the quality of what's there at the moment is not great. What we are trying to do with our client, the applicant, is to obviously increase the quality of the interiors, because the agent, so the applicant has a really clear idea of target market, which are professionals for this type of property. So also the loft is going to be used as well as an accommodation. So we're going to definitely improve the quality of what you see here. Yeah. So we can move to the next slide. So the building is a quite solid masonry building. The historical look is a corner plot. We're not touching the facade at all. Yeah. So the appearance of the building is going to stay as it is. We can jump to the next one. And it's worth having a better look at the plans in terms of the type of the quality of accommodation we're offering. So all the bedrooms are really generous in size. The minimum standard with the local regulation is 7.5 square meters. The smallest bedroom in this property is 9 square meters, and the larger one is 13 square meters. So we are offering the future occupants a really nice place to stay. And all of these rooms will have en suite, because the applicant knows really well, you know, the local market demand, and they know that, you know, with the COVID, tenants prefer having their own, you know, place to stay and their own en suite. That's why we are creating extra amenity for the future occupiers. Also, the kitchen and living area are really generous in size. There is an additional space in the basement, which is dedicated solely for the utility, with washer dryers. And in terms of the mobility and the parking requirements, another thing we are trying to do here, we're aiming to do, is to promote the green mobility. So as you can see, there is a rear yard, which will be used to store bikes. And the bins as well, they will be concealed from the street. So there's no impact on the street scene. All the bins will be positioned in the courtyard inside. And as you can see, there is already a sort of corridor, a separate access to the courtyard, which is really functional for this type of layout. Yeah, we can move forward to the next slide. And what you see here is the space in the basement, which is going to be used for the as a utility room. It has also natural ventilation, so it's quite convenient. And what you see here as well are the 2 bedrooms in the loft, which are quite generous in size, and they are both sharing. They're both sharing a bathroom. So we can go to the next one. This is just reiterating what I mentioned before. So we promote green mobility in fostering our future occupiers to use the bikes. So the bikes are positioned in the courtyard, and we can go to the next one. And the same with the bins; they are positioned in the courtyard, away from the street scene. We can go to the next one. Another thing we want to make sure is in place is security for the future occupants. So we want to discourage people which are not part of the household to enter the property. So we are going to position some security cameras facing the doors, the entrance doors, making sure, you know, contributing to the security of the dwelling as well as the area. And then the last one is about the acoustics. So as we are doing this development, we're going to make sure the party vaults are properly acoustically insulated to avoid any sound propagation to the attached property. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. If you have any questions, obviously I'm here ready to answer them.
Right, thank you very much. That was very comprehensive, and that was the first slideshow we've had a planning committee, so it made a change.
Okay.
You say the inside of that house isn't very good, but I can tell you I went round it about 40 years ago, wanting to buy it, and it was in a far worse state than what
really?
it is
Okay.
now. You know. Anyway, anybody got any questions? I think that was quite a comprehensive slideshow, wasn't it? No. Okay, thank you. Who's doing this one?
That's me, Chair.
Oh, is that you, Maureen? Thanks very much, love.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a couple of points, really, because the agent's presentation is very comprehensive there. Thank you. It's a very similar scenario, really, to the application 226 Gloucester Street that was before members at the previous committee. Similar size of HMO and similar objection again in terms of car parking. However, the Highway Authority have not objected to the application, and typically this type of application doesn't generate a great deal of car parking demand anyway. I think, as the agent has demonstrated on his slides, there is a lot of car parking in the area. No external alterations are proposed, and it's quite a substantial property. So in terms of its current use as a residential use, it could accommodate quite a large number of people anyway. The only thing to update members on it was the note from the housing officer in terms of the HMO registration, and that was circulated in extra information and again raised no objection. So nothing else to add from myself, just to say that the recommendation is for approval as in the committee agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody got any questions, Bill?
Yeah, no, I can't see anything wrong with this either, Chair. I mean, that was a good presentation from Mr. Sorry, I'm not going to say your name in case I mess it up, but it was a very good presentation and the slides were absolutely excellent. And as Maureen just said, the Cumbria County Council has no objections on the parking because they're covered by a scheme, a residence parking scheme. And can I take it, Maureen, that there is HMOs in this area already?
Thank you, Chair. It is something that we monitor as part of the local plan policy. The policy seeks to make sure that there isn't a proliferation or a concentration of HMOs in one specific area. There are a couple, but there isn't a concentration, as I would say. But it is something that we keep an eye on, and we try and map every time we approve an HMO. That's shown in a mapping system, and we continue to monitor it in terms of the policy and ensure that we don't end up with a concentration in one particular part of the town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Chair. With that, Chair, I move the recommendation with conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. And that was my similar sort of question about HMO in this area. I mean, it is an area that we are trying to regenerate anyway, and it is important we get good property in that area. And my worry is about a number of HMOs around there and what that sort of does to the local area and local community. And the parking, as you say, is not an issue in terms of planning, but it should be, because there is already issues to do with parking in those areas. And, you know, whatever you say, I really think it will generate more parking. I do honestly believe that if they are turning into bedsits or flats with the amount of contractors that may go into there, I do think it will create more parking. But it's not a planning issue, but it should be, and nothing we can do about that. But yeah, so that was my issue. I worry about the number of HMOs in that area and the parking problem for local residents.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No, well, the recommendation for approval has been moved. Is it seconded, please?
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, Paula, do you want to take a roll call?
I will do. Thanks, Chair. So Councillor Anne Thompson.
For.
Colin Thompson.
For.
Burley.
For.
Daniel Edwards.
For.
Hazel Edwards.
For.
Gone.
For.
Husband.
For.
McEwen.
For.
Mooney.
For.
Not.
For.
And Burns. Sorry, Councillor Burns.
For.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair.
Right, thank you. That's unanimously carried, so your planning permission has been granted. Thank you very much for attending the planning committee.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Bye.
Right, we go to the next application where there isn't anybody to speak, which is Abbey Road, isn't it? I can't find it. Aldi's been withdrawn. So
Page
it's the
18.
What? What page is
Page
it on?
18.
Right, now I found it. Right, it's the old newspaper house, Abbey Road. So who's doing this one, please?
That's me, Chair.
Is that you again, Maureen? Thanks, love.
It is, thank you. So this application relates to Newspaper House, which is the former Evening Mail offices on Abbey Road. And the proposal is to convert the property to 11 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. The site falls within the conservation area, and the proposal brings a vacant building on a prominent road into town back into use. The proposals are well designed, as members will see from the plans in the agenda, and they strike a really good balance between leaving the frontage untouched in terms of the historic facade, but introducing interventions to improve the appearance, particularly to the side and the rear. The most dramatic improvement really is to the side elevation, which faces over the car park, and that will become the new entrance. It's got a really poor appearance at the minute in terms of a mismatch of windows, signage, render, and so on. So it really does bring quite a contemporary look and feel to the building, and that's to be welcomed. In terms of amenity, the apartments all offer a good standard of accommodation for the proposed residents, and also have minimal impact on the adjacent neighbours, given the context of the area, which is quite tight-knit, compact streets as existing. There would be the loss of the existing office use, but the agent has provided information to justify that in terms of advertising the building for quite a period of time without any interest for an office use. But also 3 business units are proposed to the ground floor of the property, so there would be some jobs retained in any future use. The other benefits of the proposal are in terms of energy efficiency measures, highly insulated properties proposed, and also the use of photovoltaic panels on the roof as the means of energy provision. And additional planting and landscaping is proposed around the entrance, which will be off the car park, and a communal roof terrace is also proposed. The key issue really, however, with the application has been that of affordable housing provision. Members will be aware the council policy requires a minimum of 10% of units to be affordable on sites of 10 or more dwellings. So with this site, that would equate to 1 affordable unit. The policy does, however, allow an exemption in cases where a financial appraisal justifies that the provision of affordable housing wouldn't in fact be viable. The applicant submitted their own viability assessment, and that was sent out to consultants for further review and independent testing. And they've also provided us, only in the last couple of days, I'm afraid, the first draft of their viability appraisal, which indicates that affordable housing wouldn't be viable on the scheme in terms of apartments to sell on the open market. Members were circulated some extra information only earlier today, I'm afraid. Apologies, that was late in the day. As I say, we just received the first version of the report, and there's still some checking going on with the figures. I'll just read that out, if I may, in case any of the members haven't received it. Bear with me. Excuse me, I just need to log back in. So I'll just read out the extra information in case any members haven't received that. Since the report was prepared, the first draft of a financial viability assessment has been received for comment. The independent financial assessment undertaken shows that with the 10% affordable housing element as required by local plan policy, the scheme is not financially viable if the flats were offered for sale. The proposed development produces a negative residual land value and is therefore unviable without extensive value engineering by the developer. This gives sufficient justification that affordable housing would not be viable on open market apartments. Some clarification is still being sought in relation to a rental scenario. However, paragraph 64 of the NPPF advises that exemptions to this 10% requirement should also be made where the site is proposed for build-to-rent homes. The viability report should be finalised next week, and rather than delay the application unnecessarily, it's recommended that the application be delegated to the Development Services Manager Planning to issue an approval subject to receipt of satisfactory financial viability assessment and subject to a legal agreement if required, and subject to the following conditions. I'll just run through the suggested conditions for members' benefit. The standard duration limit, as normal with any application, the schedule of approved plans, drainage details, a construction and demolition method statement. Again, that would safeguard residents in the area from noise and disturbance, and when deliveries are taking place, ensure there wasn't dust left on the highway and so on. Tree protection measures for the trees on the Abbey Road frontage, landscaping details, window details as the site is within the conservation area, details of the render and overcladding and samples as required, cycle parking and storage provision, bin storage, no rendering to the Abbey Road frontage because that's in the conservation area, and so the historic frontage would remain as it is, no noisy machinery in the business units, occupancy status of the apartments, management of the communal areas, and in the electric vehicle charging point to be provided prior to occupation. So the recommendation, the application be approved subject to the receipt of the satisfactory report, and that it's deferred to the Development Services Manager to issue that decision. Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay, thanks, Maureen. Anybody got any questions for Maureen? Derek? You're on mute, Derek.
It runs in my mind that there's some cellars in the Evening Mail offices that were flooded some time ago, and all the records had to be moved down to the library. There's no mention of cellars
The library that was flooded.
the water. So I don't know whether it's in a floodplain or whatever, but there's no mention from the water board. Can you enlighten me on that, Maureen, if you know?
Thank you, Chair. The application site isn't within a flood risk zone, so it wouldn't trigger any extra measures in that regard. The provision of drainage details and surface water, that would be a planning condition, but there really is no change to the existing building in terms of that. In terms of the existing car parking remains as is. There's no additional surface water. There's no need for additional attenuation, and the Lead Local Flood Authority have been consulted on the application and raised no objection. I must admit, flooding in the basement is not something I've been aware of, but as I say, the drainage conditions should cover that, and the applicant's due diligence. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you. This may be a question that is not for this, but I can see from the papers that questions been asked of the CCG, and this development has triggered a payment for the GP practices in the area. It looks like it's going over the limit. Could I just ask, has the same assessment been done on the schools and the impact on the schools around? I don't know whether it's going to be able to house families, but if it is, have we actually looked at the impact on the schools in the area as well as the CCG?
Thank you, Chair. The CCG comments, they're quite a new thing to us, really. I think the Chair raised at the last meeting in terms of the NHS has started to ask for contributions. There's a couple of things I wanted to say about that, really. The first aspect is it's better if all of the 106 requirements are transparent in a document, and that's something that our policy section are working on at the moment. in terms of setting out clearly for developers the range of items that we could ask for 106 contributions for, and when those would be triggered and what they would be used for. So, for example, that document would set out financial contribution requests for highway works, public open space, affordable housing, possibly public art, in a transparent document. So that's something we're working on at the moment. We're going to be speaking to the NHS estates to find out from them a bit more information, really, in terms of what the trigger points might be for that. In terms of the CCG comments on this application, we did go back to them because really there wasn't sufficient justification to say that a 106 contribution was reasonable in this case, given that one of the surgeries they referred to has just moved to the Alfred Barrow Health Centre. We didn't have any information from them in terms of capacity in the borough. It may be that whilst one surgery might be under capacity, the one next door might have capacity. We needed more information really on what capital works they required and so on. So whilst in principle we can fund NHS work through 106 agreements, that needs to be in the form of quite a detailed background information document from the NHS estates, which I think will come to us in due course, and then we'll be able to update our infrastructure document going forward, which is something, excuse me, planning policy are currently working on. So we didn't think it was a reasonable or justifiable request in this instance, but it may be in the future with other applications. In terms of schools, again, that is something that can be covered under Section 106 agreements, and that would come from the County Council, who are often a consultee on major applications, and for them to say whether there is capacity within existing schools or whether 106 funding is required. I'm not aware that they have asked for any in the past, since most of the schools in the borough have had capacity where we've had housing applications come forward, but it may be something that the county will ask for in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Bill?
Thanks, Anne. Just a quick one. I think Maureen's just answered it, really. I was just going to ask about what you're going to say about 106 agreements, but you said it quite well there. Just another one before I go. I mean, are we okay to say, yeah, we agree this, or should we wait for defer it till we get a result back from them? I don't know. I'm looking for guidance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. As I say, we received the first draft of the report just on Monday, and that was quite conclusive in terms of the scheme wouldn't be viable where apartments were on the open market. We did go back to them with queries about potential for rental, query some of the figures, as is a normal process when we get some of these documents. Has to be a little bit of figure checking goes on. Unfortunately, the author is on leave this week and is back on Monday, and the application as statutory timescale is up within the next couple of weeks. So I think the best way really for all parties is we're nearly there with that document, but not quite. And rather than delay the application to the next meeting, it would seem reasonable to, if the contents of the report are satisfactory, that the decision is deferred to the head of planning to issue that decision with appropriate conditions. Thank you, Chair.
You've answered that. Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation with the conditions. Thank you.
Is there a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Right, can you take a vote, Paula, please? Thanks, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Anne Thompson.
For.
Colin Thompson.
For.
Bertley.
For.
Daniel Edwards.
For.
Gorn.
For.
Hazel Edwards.
For.
Husband.
For.
McEwen.
For.
Mooney.
For.
Knott.
For.
And Burns.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Sorry, I had to mute myself. My grandson was shouting at his Xbox. I wish they'd do something to the two buildings next door, because they're disgraceful, aren't they? The old Dixon's Bakery and the what was like I don't know what it was. It was something when it worked that got jobs for people and training.
It was the Co-op years ago, Anne.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it was Co-op, and then it was Dixon's Bakery, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That took it over. Right. Okay. We've got one more item, which is just an appeal decision relating to the Strand car wash, which is just for noting the appeal was dismissed. It was only for a big sign. Okay. Do you agree to note that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Well, can you turn live stream off now? Thank you, Rachel. We are finished.